Oh, MAGA, you're in trouble. Apparently there's a shortage of workers on the farm. But don't worry, MAGA. Brooke Collins, who heads agriculture, says that she has a solution. Seems like Trump and Brooke Collins have put their heads together and come up with a solution to solve the problem on the farms losing workers. Let's watch the video and see what Brooke Collins has to say to solve this issue.
Score enough. There will be no amnesty. The mass deportations continue, but in a strategic way, and we move the workforce towards automation and 100% American participation, which again, with 34 million people, able-bodied adults on Medicaid, we should be able to do that fairly quickly. Thank you.
Did you hear that, MAGA? They're saying if you're able-bodied and on Medicaid, you are going to work in the fields. MAGA, this is where it hits you. You're going to work in the fields. And you're going to see what it's like for these undocumented immigrants to come to America and work a hard day's labor in the American fields. Get ready to pack up Mima and Pop-Pop and put them on a bus and send them to the fields, MAGA. That's what you voted for, and that's what you deserve. Tell me what you guys think about this in the comments. Have a day.
America has never lacked labor. It just always had a very clear idea of who should be doing it. The fields, the factories, the kitchens, the care work, always someone else's job. And now, according to our Secretary of Agriculture, that job should go to Medicaid recipients. Not because they volunteered, not because it pays well, but because in the eyes of power, the poor are disposable. And poverty is now a work assignment. Recently, the Secretary of Agriculture suggested that immigrants being deported from this country will be replaced on farms by Medicaid recipients. Let that sink in. We're now saying if you are poor, you work. If you are sick, you work. If you are disabled, an elderly, or a veteran who served this country and now relies on public health care, you work. Not because it's a calling, but because your life, your value, is reduced to whether you can produce cheap labor. For food, you may not even be able to afford yourself. This isn't policy, it's punishment. It's the reincarnation of an old American idea that certain people were born to serve. And if they can't serve willingly, then the government will assign them value. Let's be real here. We know who she's not imagining out there in the fields. She's not thinking of white mothers in rural Ohio. She's not thinking of Vietnam vets who've spent decades battling PTSD. She's not thinking of your grandfather on oxygen or your neighbor recovering from surgery. But when she says Medicaid recipients, she wants you to picture black or brown face, a poor person, someone else. This is not about labor. This is about lineage. This is about who America has always considered the help. And now that immigration is being restricted and borders are tightening, they're looking inward and they're asking, who's left to exploit? But here's the irony. The people they want to push into those fields are the same people who built the country in the first place, who fed America, who picked, planted, and processed without dignity, wages, or thanks. And we are not going back. This isn't just a cruel policy suggestion. It's a reflection of how far the political mind has strayed from compassion and logic. Because if they truly cared about labor shortages, they'd reform immigration, they'd raise wages, they'd offer health care, housing, and safety. But instead, they punish the poor for being poor, and they punish the sick for being sick. So the next time someone in power suggests that Medicaid recipients should work the farms, ask them, which ones? The single mothers in trailer parks? The white veterans on disability? The 74-year-old widower in Alabama? Because if you're going to assign people to the fields, don't pretend it's about fairness. Call it what it is. Modern day indentured labor dressed up as policy. And let me be clear. We've picked enough. We've bent our backs for centuries, and we are not going back to the fields for anyone's political fantasy.
Hello brothers and sisters, welcome back to the channel. Well, I'm hoping that you're doing great from wherever you're watching me from, whether it's in the evening, afternoon, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. There is something great that I want us to talk about. Well, I'm hoping that you're great from any state and every state that you're watching me from. There's something that I want us to talk about, really important. Just recently, I think maybe a week ago, the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture announced that there will be a consequence of people who want to be on Medicaid, and that since the country is having labor shortage on the farms, and the entire United States is having shortage of farm laborers, places like Texas, Nebraska are having all these challenges. They're suggesting that for you to have Medicaid, you'll have to work on the farm. And this really has negative consequence because we have people that depend on this Medicaid. We have people because Medicaid is a government support service that gives to its citizens, people who cannot afford to pay for their hospital bills, people cannot afford to do all these things. And so it means that this is important to them. One thing that happens is that this is so diabolical because Americans, especially white America, are left in a place of regretting the decision that they made. And the decision that they made was voting for Mr. Donald Trump. Because all of this is coming as a way of pushing a normal citizen to work on the farm. And you're not going to be telling me that this is much far different from slavery. It is not far from slavery because this isn't even indentured servitude. This is slavery, brothers and sisters. Because you have no choice, and we have people that can't pay for their for their medical bills, and it means that they'll be forced to work to these places, right? And so the recent statement from the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture declaring that access to Medicaid will be tied to mandatory farm labor due to a national labor shortage has stirred intense debate across the country. This policy suggestion, spurred by dwindling availability of immigrant labor following crackdowns and restrictive immigration policies, places a heavy burden on a section of Americans who are already vulnerable. The implications stretch far beyond agriculture and healthcare policy, touching the pillars of labor ethics, human rights, and economic justice, and the contradiction embedded within American political allegiances. Ironically, many white workers, working-class Americans, especially in rural states that heavily supported Donald Trump, find themselves cornered by policies implemented by the very administration they helped bring to power. And this leads us to discussion. Do you think that this is right? Well, I want to switch this video, and then I'll be back. I'll be sharing my thoughts in regards to this, and then we'll be talking, we'll be sharing, we'll be having a lot much to talk about because people are getting to learn the truth. So let's watch the video. I'll be back. If you're watching us for the first time, I'll ask you to subscribe to the channel, join our membership, and really get so we can offer you. But until then, let's watch the video. I'll be back.
Are you on Medicaid or know somebody who is? You've got to watch this because the Trump administration wants to send you to work in the fields. And no, I'm not kidding. This is Brooke Rollins. She's the Secretary of Agriculture in the United States. This is this morning. She's just been asked whether the Trump administration is going to continue the mass deportation of farm workers who are picking our food. Here's her answer.
I can't underscore enough. There will be no amnesty. The mass deportations continue, but in a strategic way, and we move the workforce towards automation and 100% American participation, which again, with 34 million people, able-bodied adults on Medicaid, we should be able to do that fairly quickly. Thank you.
I mean, there's so many things wrong with it, I don't really know where to start. First of all, who's going to pay for the automation, Brooke? Would that be the farmers? Farmers, do you have a few $1 million to throw together to put a bunch of robots in your fields? I'm sure you do. And that can be thrown together in just a couple days, weeks, right? Secondly, the mass deportations are going to continue, so this is ethnic cleansing. Let's just call it what it is. We are going to ethnically cleanse all of the migrant farm workers and replace them with American workers. Raise your hand if you want to go work in a field for, what is it, $7 an hour? Maybe 10. But oh no, don't worry about it if you're just a regular unemployed American who doesn't want to work for a pittance, because we'll get them all from the Medicaid population. Though that's going to be tricky because 64% of people on Medicaid already work full or part-time. Then a large share of them are also not working due to caregiving, not working due to illness or disability, not working due to going to school so they can get a better job that has health insurance, or not working due to retirement. The small segment that's left, that's the orange part. Those are the people who are going to be picking our food, y'all. I mean, until the robots can take over. So this is not economic policy, just in case you were wondering. This is racism and the lie that there are 38 million people on Medicaid sitting around playing video games, which has never been true. Of course, they needed that lie to justify cutting $1 trillion from Medicaid so they could give tax cuts to billionaires and the biggest corporations in the country. But the problem is lies can't pick produce. Also, Stephen Miller, the man behind the puppet here, has no idea how to run an economy. He just wants brown people out. Period. Takeaways? Well, if you're on Medicaid, get ready to work in the fields. And all of us better stock up on canned fruits and vegetables because the fresh stuff is about to become very hard to get.
When you think about, there are 34 million able-bodied adults in our Medicaid program. There are plenty of workers in America.
So if you want to be on Medicaid, be prepared to go work in the fields. That is what they're saying now.
Where the president stands in his vision for farm labor, the first thing I'll say is the president has been unequivocal that there will be no amnesty. And
they're making it very clear. They're going after all the undocumented farm workers, which means there won't be people to pick up crops in the fields. There won't be people to help with crop management. Farm workers are going to be deported. And their solution is, if you are somebody who is receiving Medicaid, you're going to need to go work in the fields. Now, that was Pazuzu. She is the Secretary of Agriculture, and she's saying that the 34 million able-bodied Americans who are on Medicaid need to get up and go to their local farm and start picking some crops after they deport the people who have been doing these jobs. But the biggest problem here is most Americans are not applying for those jobs. Most Americans don't want to do them. 2/3 of farm workers are people who have immigrated to the United States.
2/3 of crop workers are foreign-born. And while many come to the U.S. for seasonal jobs legally through H-2A visas, the USDA estimates that 42% of crop laborers are undocumented.
Now, I don't know what they're planning on doing here, because the only way it would be feasible that Americans who are receiving Medicaid will automatically have to go work on a farm is the application process would have to be done at a farm. Because let me apply for Medicaid through the online website and then they say I need to report to a farm. I'm just not going to show up. What? If you've ever applied for health insurance, you can do the whole process online. Medicaid is the exact same thing. And I think people don't understand that Medicaid is not a check that you receive. Medicaid isn't free money. You're doing mountains of paperwork to just receive basic medical care, and the money for that medical care you never see, you never touch, you never even experience, because it goes directly to your medical care team. But y'all are expecting Americans to go work on farms. Okay, good luck, girl, with that, because these farms are all in red states, and this is going to affect y'all more than anybody.
Jim Jordan is trying to claim that it's not immoral to force people on Medicaid to go to work. Look at this.
If there's an able-bodied adult out there now who is in our welfare system, guess what? That person's going to have to work. That is fair to taxpayers. That's good for our economy. Maybe most importantly, that's actually good for that recipient, for that.
But he's leaving out the part that most people on SNAP or other government assistance programs do work, oftentimes multiple jobs. This issue is not about laziness, it's about low pay. Also, able-bodied doesn't mean they don't have any challenges. Many of these people are caregivers, have undiagnosed disabilities or undiagnosed mental illnesses, or they just simply have limited access to transportation or childcare. See, work requirements sound good on TV, but in reality, they usually kick people off of their benefits and don't help them find a job at all. A study conducted on Arkansas's Medicaid work requirements showed that 18,000 people lost their coverage and there was no boost in employment. This isn't about encouraging work. This is about gutting safety nets under the false pretense that these people are gaming the system. So no, Jim, it's not far from immoral. It's very immoral to punish people for being poor or struggling.
Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins just dropped the most dystopian work plan since the company town. Just this week, Secretary Rollins said we can replace all the immigrant farm workers with, wait for it, people on Medicaid. Because apparently having health insurance now makes you eligible for manual labor conscription. She literally said there will be no amnesty, the mass deportations continue, but in a strategic way. We move the workforce toward automation and 100% American participation, which, with 34 million able-bodied adults on Medicaid, we should be able to do fairly quickly. Yeah, you know what I love about this plan? The sheer audacity of it. They've managed to turn healthcare into a draft notice. Congratulations, you've been selected for our new program, Medicare to Migrant Worker. Step right up, Grandma. Time to pick the strawberries. Your arthritis medication depends on it. And they call it strategic deportations. Strategic, like there's some master chess game happening here. Well, we can't deport them all at once. That would crash the food supply. We need to do this strategically. You know, one abuela at a time. Here's the beautiful irony. They're complaining about 34 million people on Medicaid, while simultaneously creating a system that ensures those same people will need even more medical care from working in fields all day. It's like a self-perpetuating healthcare industrial complex, but with more sunburn and fewer benefits. They're essentially creating the ultimate gig economy job. Work the fields to keep your health insurance, but good luck accessing that insurance when you're too exhausted from picking tomatoes to make it to a doctor's appointment. Now, most of these so-called able-bodied Medicaid recipients are already working. They're just not working hard enough, apparently. Because nothing says American dream like forcing people to choose between healthcare and dignity. Hey, at least we'll have the freshest produce picked by the most medically insured workforce in history. Assuming they can still afford the insurance after working for agricultural wages. Make sure to follow me on all the other networks and like, share, and comment below to let me know your thoughts. Stay vigilant. Be loud.
People on Medicaid don't look like what you picture in your head. I am on Medicaid. My family is part of the 3.1 million North Carolinians who are on Medicaid. And I will tell you right now, it has been a godsend for my family. I do not know how we would survive financially without it. I lost my job in July of 2024, July 12th. We are almost to the 1 year point of me being unemployed without full-time employment. And Medicaid has helped keep my family afloat because there are medical issues in my family that need to be addressed and was not able to continue to pay for COBRA. I had very good insurance at my old job. I had a very good paying job with great insurance. And I was paying $3,000 out of pocket every month for the first 3 months for COBRA to keep that insurance. And that was not sustainable. And I had a lot of issues personally thinking about applying for Medicaid because how much money I used to make and thinking, well, Medicaid is for people who don't make much money and who really need help. But the truth is I needed help and I had to swallow my pride, and my family needed that help, and it has been so helpful. And now I don't know what's going to happen. I have spent the past 12 months applying for jobs nearly every day, networking, interviewing for jobs, being contacted by recruiters who then ghost me and don't even show up for the interview time that they set up. The job market is that bad. Medicaid is not about people who are lazy. It's about people who need help. And right now, my family has needed help. I don't know what North Carolina is going to do about Medicaid. I know the state can't afford to fund it at the same way it had been. And hopefully for me and my family, one of these jobs I'm interviewing for lands, and that's our ticket off of Medicaid and to health insurance once again. But I know that that's my case. If I'm that lucky, there's still literally millions of others across the state who won't be so lucky, and millions more across the country. And I realize there are parts of this big, beautiful bill that will probably help me once I get a job. Like, that's not lost on me. But please understand that there are millions of people out there who probably look just like you, might be your neighbor, might be one of your best friends who you have no idea is on Medicaid because they really want to work. They're willing and able to, but they haven't gotten that opportunity. So before you shout from the rooftops that this piece of legislation is passed, just think about those that it is going to affect in a negative way. and see what you may be able to do for them.
I think everybody needs to get on the same page when it comes to government assistance, because some people have seen to make a lifestyle out of being on government assistance. I want everybody out there to know, you do realize Medicaid, EBT, any kind of government assistance is not designed to pay for your poor choices. You are the one who laid down having baby after baby after baby. The government is not responsible to take care of your children. That is your responsibility. I keep seeing people, I don't know what side of TikTok I must have landed on, because I keep seeing people talking about they are low income, as if that is an excuse to keep procreating. If you know you're low income, why do you have 3 children? You knew you were in low income when you had 1 child. Then you had 2. Now you got 3, so that you can end up with more Medicaid and more EBT benefits. This really needs to stop. The American taxpayer should not have to pay for the bad decisions of others. The American taxpayer should not be punished because somebody else does not want to get up and go to work. I've said this before. I'm not somebody who never thinks that anybody should ever be on Medicaid. I think there are exceptions. If you are a disabled person who is physically unable to work, if you're a senior citizen, you need Medicaid, EBT, food stamps, I think that you should be able to get those services. But if you are an able-bodied person, you should not be making a career out of being on Medicaid. You should not be on Medicaid, EBT, food stamps, any other kind of government assistance year after year after year after year.
Remember when everybody was saying that immigrants were taking their jobs? They're coming here and stealing our jobs. Well, I guess you were right.
The first thing I'll say is the president has been unequivocal that there will be no amnesty. And I think that's very, very important. To your question about mass deportations, the president and I have spoken about that once or twice. And he has always been of the mindset that at the end of the day, the promise to America to ensure that we have a 100% American workforce stands. But we must be strategic in how we are implementing the mass deportation so as not to compromise our food supply. Ultimately, the answer on this is automation. Also some reform within the current governing structure. And then also when you think about, there are 34 million able-bodied adults in our Medicaid program. There are plenty of workers in America.
Yep, you just heard it. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins just proposed that U.S. Medicaid recipients replace migrant workers on these farms. And mind you, this is a solution to the problem that the administration has caused. Her administration. Her boss, not to mention the double down on the amnesty thing with the added bonus of basically saying that this was supposed to be a way to get a 100% American workforce, because that's really the goal here. And all of this in light of what Trump said when he was over at Alcatraz, this farmer's responsibility thing, which again sounds real familiar. I want to know how they propose to do this. And white people, y'all make up 40% or something like that of the people on Medicaid. Y'all weren't lying. They really were taking y'all's jobs. And I guess y'all about to go work on the farm. Listen, don't go out there and work and then end up getting a tan because ICE might be visiting your door. Don't go out there with a record because now you're a violent immigrant. They will just pull your citizenship because that's a thing now too. And please, I hope it doesn't escape anyone that there's a big possibility, a huge possibility, that the same tactic used in this mass deportation will be used to get all these Medicaid recipients to the farm. I'm really interested to know, what are they going to do? They're just forcing people at this point? So basically, you're telling me that if you're on Medicaid, you're just going to be shipped off to a farm. Well, I mean, that's... There's a word for this. It escapes me now at present what it is.
Will Medicaid recipients be working on farms to fulfill their work requirements? Well, U.S. Department of Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins said in a press conference that Medicaid recipients who are facing stricter work requirements under the new budget bill's Medicaid law could potentially be working on farms to replace the deported immigrants. She said that. And she also made it very clear that there will be no amnesty for migrants. Let's listen to her say this.
About where the president stands in his vision for farm labor. The first thing I'll say is the president has been unequivocal that there will be no amnesty. And I think that's very, very important. I and the rest of our cabinet certainly support that, effectuate that, and make sure that happens every single day. The second thing, to your question about mass deportations, the president and I have spoken about that once or twice, and he has always been of the mindset that at the end of the day, the promise to America to ensure that we have a 100% American workforce stands, but we must be strategic in how we are implementing the mass deportation so as not to compromise our food supply. Ultimately, the answer on this is automation, also some reform within the current governing structure, and then also when you think about there are 34 million able-bodied adults in our Medicaid program. There are plenty of workers in America.
What else is next? Where are they going with all of these little steps that they've been taking and continue to take? Who knows? I will keep you updated for sure, but some of the things that come out of this administration's mouth is beyond questionable. I'll keep you updated. Please like, follow, and share so that I can continue to provide you with content. And please go follow me on YouTube and Instagram as well. It's JMamaJams there. I appreciate you being here.
What Brooke Rollins just said, which is that they're going to replace the migrant farm workers with AI and Medicaid recipients, I mean, that is about to have thousands of far-left lunatics' heads go, pow. Now, I got to tell you something. If you weren't such heinous anti-Semites, I would so be on the path with you, because I think that is gross. I think the farm workers and the people that are trying to build the houses here in Los Angeles where it's like you can't find anybody, that's really upsetting, because these are always wonderful people. And having lived in Mexico for a while, wonderful, wonderful people. But because you're such heinous anti-Semites, you're calling in such big karma on all of your causes. That's why something like this is happening. It's called the karma boomerang. These are the people that were saying online, happy that those kids drowned because of who their parents voted for, who are also going to go vote for that schmuck Mamdani.
Where is MAGA when you need them? Nowhere to be found. MAGA, look, here's a Florida farm that needs employees. You said you wanted your jobs back. Look at all these jobs. You see all these trucks that's parked over here and all these crops. All these crops, vegetation, and fruits that's planted in Florida, which is a red state, by the way. Do you notice there's nobody on these fields? Take a very close look. No one is on these fields. You said you wanted your jobs back. Now you got your jobs back. Now get to work. Okay? And they'll say, well, what are you saying? People should just run around and be illegal in America? No, that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is the people who had their documentations and had a chance to get their self on the right side of the law, why didn't you give them a chance instead of chasing them down, dragging them out of schools, graduations, out of their homes? Why didn't you give them a chance so they could go through the system, get documented, and work in peace? That's all we're saying, okay? Because I know a lot of you will get this twisted and try to twist stories and tell, well, you want to break the law. No, we want to do the right thing by people. We're human beings. That's it. A lot of these people had their documentations in the pipeline to become legal so they can work in the United States. But you made sure that you sent ICE to take it away. So here's your job. Go knock yourselves out. Okay? And don't think you're going to get a pay increase from these farmers either. You still get the same pay, no matter what. You understand? Now, peace.
We're deporting immigrants, but they're the ones who pick the fruits and vegetables upon which the Florida economy depends. But I have a solution. We're changing the law so children can go to work in the fields. That's the end of an empire. That's what happens. And no one says boo. 14-year-olds will now be eligible to work until I think 9 at night. I mean, all kinds of things that the law forbade for children before. We're going to have child labor. And it's going to be good because, you see, you can pay the children as little as you got away with paying those immigrants. Jesus Christ. How many symptoms do you want to see before you go to the doctor? How many things are you going to face before you realize you got a different problem than the one you thought you had?
First off, Medicaid is AID, so there's that. Number two, stop falling for stupid shit. They already proved that the people on Medicaid that are going to lose Medicaid are not committing fraud. My 70-year-old grandmother is not committing fraud. The disabled veteran is not committing fraud. The 8-year-old that needs Medicaid because his mom doesn't make enough money working 3 fucking jobs is not committing fraud. And here's a further point. Every single person on the planet deserves health care. Period. 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 There is no more. Full stop. Take your opinion. You know what to do with it. People deserve health care. Period. I am happy to pay. If it means that people don't have to suffer and not have health care they need, I am happy to pay. Raise my taxes. Do it. I would much rather my taxes go towards Medicaid or some form of social health care so that everyone is taken care of. Food assistance so that everyone has food to eat. Housing assistance so that people have a place to live, than spending $900 billion on fucking airplanes we don't goddamn need to invade countries we got no business in. Raising the wages for Congress when they don't do the right thing anyway. Tax cuts for the ultra wealthy. That is not where I want my taxes to go. I will gladly pay more in taxes if it means everyone in this country has medical has the medical assistance, has the medical care they need, food to eat, and a place to live. I will gladly pay more in taxes. Gladly. And if you don't have that attitude, I can't say it. I'm on TikTok. I can't say it. But you know. You know. You know. Get out.
So I know I was talking about, the Latino vote before. The Viva vote for Donald Trump. Okay, well, let's get on to the white folks. The white farmers. So, word is out now that the white farmers voted for Donald Trump because they thought they were going to get Black Americans in the fields. Because they also thought Black folks did not have jobs. So when we put this all together, somehow the white farmers were convinced that Black folks don't have jobs. We don't work. we don't work. And so they voted for Donald Trump because they thought, okay, he gonna send them in the fields. So Donald Trump and them, with the whole Project 2025, said, okay, so we got to make this happen. So we got to cut these DEI stuff, all this DEI stuff, to put Black Americans out of work. When in reality, they put a bunch of white folk out of work just to get Black folks out of work. And so all these cuts that are happening are to try and harm Black Americans so much till they think that we're going to go into the fields. Now, when you think about that, that makes you double back and see why they want the Latinos out. Because the Latinos, right, to them, they are reproducing entirely too fast, okay? And so they're like, we got to get them out of here because Black Americans don't reproduce as fast as the Latinos. And so if we could get them out, then the Black Americans can take their place in the field. This is for real. And so now you double back to the Black jobs. They're taking your job. Yes, you got to double back to what he said. They're taking Black jobs, y'all. Like, they have all this down. Like, they have all this whole circle. So now let's go back to the farmers, if you're still with me, okay? Because the white farmers, that's what they believed was going to happen. So if y'all got all that straight, this is a message to the white farmers. The last thing you want is for black Americans to be in your fields. Don't let the devil fool you. As a matter of fact, you might want to let the devil fool you to see what's going to happen. Well, I'm trying to tell you, the last thing you ever going to want is black Americans in your fields. Nah, I'm going to let you fill in the blank on that one. And this goes to show that they will go to any lengths. Remember I said that, first of all, we had the Latinos, some Latinos, not all of them, just them Cuban ones, talk about you're next, right? To black Americans. So they thought we was immigrants, okay? And so now we have the white farmers who are still living in the 1700s, thinking back to glory days, quote unquote. They thought with their vote, we were going to the fields. So you got one group thinking they gonna kick us out of here, and you got another group of people thinking that we going to the fields. Now this right here is a real mental problem, because people are literally stuck. I'm telling y'all, people are stuck in the 1700s when they think about black Americans, okay? I'm telling you, their thought process, they sit around probably campgrounds and picnics and stuff and talk about how can we make this happen? That was their heyday. I'm telling you, when that freaking plantation house burned down in Louisiana, I think, right? That was their heyday. Now, I'm trying to tell you, that was their heyday. When that plantation house down in Louisiana got torched, okay? I'm telling you, that broke them. But I just want to, I want to teach them a little bit more history if I have your attention, right? If I have your attention, right? This is some history that a lot of people don't know, okay? But y'all didn't know black Americans had white servants? Y'all ain't know that? I mean, it wasn't widespread or anything like that, but we had white servants. Yeah, and they wanted to be our servants because they needed work. They were coming over from Europe. Yeah, and they were docile too. Yeah, they were docile. And black Americans, the aristocrats, the wealthy ones, because there were wealthy ones, okay? They had white servants. So I don't know if y'all ever see them pictures. Let me find a picture. I couldn't find a picture. I wasn't gonna go back and try to find a picture, but if you can watch videos, you'll be able to find a picture of possibly some black people in the horse-drawn carriages, and there may be someone white as the horseman or the I'm not sure what you call them, coachman or whatever. Yeah, he worked for them. Yes, indeed. It was a big thing. It was a big thing, when everybody began to see in the early 1900s, what? Black Americans, they use the other word. Black Americans have white servants. Yeah, that's a bit of history they don't like to put on TV. And the reason for it is because they were like, okay, they had, white people here that they could hire. And they also had black people here that they could hire. But they felt that the white people from Europe were so docile, and they were less expensive. Now, they weren't the only ones who thought that. The wealthy white people thought that too. The wealthy white people were like, yeah, we like the docile immigrant white people. They're a lot cheaper. They take less money. Yeah, so there's a bit of history for you. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it was like that. Oh yeah, because they knew they would have to pay black Americans a lot more. Lot more. So they always went for the immigrant. And see, when the black Americans hired the white immigrants, they were like really like, yes, we will do it, because they want to stay in America. Here's the difference though. Black Americans didn't mistreat them. They didn't mistreat them at all. But anyway, that's just a little side note. But yeah, to the white farmers again, this is the last thing you want. The last thing you want is for black Americans to be out in your fields. The last thing you want. Trust and believe. And next time, you know what? Stop basing your vote on how to harm black Americans. Because you're going to end up running into that wall that's going to tumble. Okay? That's what's going to end up happening. Stop doing that. All of you do it. Like, all of you. You had the conservative Asian Americans coming through with the whole Ivy League school. We don't want black Americans there. Then you had the I will vote for Donald Trump Cubans, okay, who were thinking, okay, you're next, okay? Okay, we're not immigrants, so we're not next. And now we have the white farmer who thought that they were going to get the black Americans in the fields. And then this is all off of Project 2025. So now look where you got America. Look where you got the United States of America. And you know, a lot of people say, why black Americans think everything revolves around them? No, y'all think everything revolves around us because y'all make everything revolve around us. Y'all stuff coming out.
People should be terrified on what the Secretary of Agriculture just said to the American people. She said, answering a question from a reporter, who is going to be taking over these jobs on the farms that you guys now said that there's no amnesty for migrants that are working in these positions, the ones that you are deporting, detaining, and, in my opinion, kidnapping? Who's going to be working these jobs? You're like, oh, the 34 million Medicaid recipients. And we're going to 100% automate the farms. First of all, I want to know who the fuck is paying for this, because we already know that farms are some of the biggest welfare recipients in our country. That's correct. The people that say, pick yourself up by your bootstraps are the same ones that we're paying so they can pick themselves up by their rich ass bootstraps. Again, everything's in the description. We've been subsidizing them for decades, for generations, either to make things or not to make things, or just to twiddle their fucking thumbs. So, again, the red states, the welfare states, let's add that on to them. Now, we're not even talking about Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and then, you know, your grifter in chief, Donald Trump. We're just talking about the farmers. Yes, I understand that not all farms get subsidies, but a fuck ton of them do. Again, it's in the description. These automated machines, that the best ones are made in China, and there's a 55% tariff on that. Even if they were to take away that 55% tariff and we would get those machines at cost, Americans would be on the hook for those. What happens when China decides that, oh, we don't like America, they're pissing us off because this administration won't shut the fuck up. And they say, oh, we're not going to give you the parts for that. We're going to have these ancient relics sitting in the middle of farms. Think about how many technicians that you're going to need, because these things have to be serviced pretty much on a daily basis. So you have to do the training for that. And these are highly sophisticated equipment. It's not like you just put in a bolt or a nut. Okay? You're going to need people that know about computers, about AI systems. Let's get down to the freaking Medicaid recipients. Half of them are babies, so let's take them out. Okay? So now you got like what? Well, 17 million. Then after that, you have to cut that in half again, if not more, because you have women. And then some people might think this is sexist, but a woman that is vastly intelligent is going to go ahead and work in the fields. Do you think a woman's going to go out there and go ahead and break a nail and break a sweat when they can go somewhere else and make their money much easier? Come on, man. Come on. And if you guys think that's sexist, please come at me in the comments. We'll talk about it. But it's the truth. Then you have the able-bodied men, which really fucking pisses me off when they say able-bodied men. So half of those men cannot work at all because they're too old, or they have diagnoses where they can't work any hard labor. Then you have the other ones that have doctor's notes and saying that, oh, I can only work for an hour, or I can work for 15 minutes. I can't work in the hot sun. I can't pick up this. I can't pick up that. That's why they're on fucking Medicare, you stupid motherfuckers. Or the ones that actually could work, that you guys are saying that there's so many of them out there that are fraudulently taking Medicaid. They're not going to a field for some old fucking bigot to yell at them saying that they're not doing even a quarter of the job that a migrant that they had 2 days ago was doing. This plan is fucked from the beginning. But the main portion of this that I'm fucking terrified about is that the government is going to sell this as a loan. And when they can't repay this loan, they're going to foreclose on these farms and they're going to sell them off piece by piece to corporations or keep them. That means the government and big corp will own all of our food supply. You want to talk about bread lines? You're about to create them. It's just, I can't even come up with the words of how fucking stupid this administration is. I can't even come up with the words for how many people that think that this administration, after the big, beautiful pile of shit, think that this is a good idea. Like, it's going to take 10 years at least to 20 years to fully automate everything. Plus, you're not going to have the workers in the fields, so those fields are going to go bare and dry. Fuck, man. Like, good morning.
The Department of Agriculture Secretary Rollins said, when the Medicaid cuts come in, all those folks who have been deported, who have been working in agriculture, they can start being replaced by people who have been on Medicaid. Those people who may be disabled, who may have mental problems, who can't bend down anymore because they're in their 60s or 70s. They can go pick strawberries? Really? I'd like to see Rollins stay out there for an entire day in the fields and see what it's like to pick berries or fruit. And when he's clocked to see how his production is, I'd like to see how that works out as well. How dare you commit Americans to work when we know work is A, unverifiable, and B, not necessary to collect Medicaid.
Hello brothers and sisters, welcome back to the channel. As you know, I'm your host and presenter Agent Stories. Well, I'm hoping that you're doing great. So let's talk about this because this is an important topic that I feel like we need to talk about it. And there's an intersection between Medicaid and agriculture. All these things are somehow interdependent with each other because we have people who needs to be healthy to work on this farm. At the same time, we have to produce farm products like it's just normal like any other society. Now, at the core of this issue lies the collapse of agricultural labor system, traditionally dependent on undocumented immigrant workers. And now, for decades, American farms have relied on cheap, mobile, and often undocumented labor force to sustain productivity, right? With increased deportations, border restrictions, and anti-immigrant rhetoric under the Trump administration, this labor pool has shrunk drastically as a result of farms across country struggling to find enough hands to harvest crops, leading to a significant economic losses. The proposed solution to conscript Medicaid recipients into agricultural labor reflects a neoliberal approach to governance, where social safety nets are exchanged for compulsory labor, fundamentally altering the meaning of public assistance. And that's what it means. And that's a couple of things that I want you to understand in this place. Because this is something that the government is obligated to offer these medical services, but they can't shift it to a compulsory work that you have to do. That's why I call this slavery. And also there's another thing that I need to address in the same line is that since a lot of Americans complain that they are having immigrants that are coming to the country and taking this work, especially in white-dominated places, white Americans complaining that, oh, all these people are coming in our country and doing our jobs. The question is, what are you doing for yourself now that all these jobs are there and ain't nobody want to take these jobs and nobody wanted to work in these farms? And that's the biggest question is, do you think who's going to be taking these jobs? You're supposed to be taking the job because you say that oh, it is the immigrants that are taking the jobs and we are not doing the jobs. And now the jobs are there. You're not doing the jobs. Secondly, you participated in implementing this, whether directly or indirectly. And you'll agree with me. First, you voted Mr. Donald Trump, right? And these policies are being implemented by Mr. Donald Trump. It is all the people that are in the power that are doing this. These raises profound ethical questions about consent and coercion. Medicaid was established to provide healthcare to low-income individuals, not to function as a lever for forced labor. Trying to access healthcare with physical work, particularly farm work, which is strenuous, hazardous, and seasonal, amounts to a form of economic coercion. Many of those who rely on Medicaid include the elderly, people with disabilities, single parents, and individuals with chronic illness. Remember, groups who are not physically or logistically equipped to perform such labor. The blanket assumption that every Medicaid recipient can or should pick vegetables in order to qualify for health services undermines the principles of universal human dignity, right? And I think you all need to go and look at this because this is something that is happening. Also, this policy reflects the broader collapse of American social contract, where rights are increasingly conditional on labor participation. The American dream once promised opportunity and protection, not forced toil in exchange for access to basic needs. Health is a basic need. It reflects a shift from a citizen-based entitlement model to a worker-based benefit model where even survival tools like healthcare are not seen as right, but something to be earned through labor, regardless of one's physical ability or situation. This is particularly ironic given how many of the voters now affected by this policy have historically opposed welfare programs for others, particularly people of color, whom they viewed as undeserving. So you know that this is something that has been happening for a long time. Black people have received this firsthand, and right now you're seeing it happening to majority of all these folks. Also, one thing about this policy that I would like to highlight is that the policy disproportionately affects white rural Americans, many of whom are elderly or disabled and reside in regions where agricultural work may not be even available. These voters are sold as nationalist, anti-immigrant vision that promised them to revitalize working-class America, but are now discovering the economic realities of nativism. With immigrants gone, someone has to fill the labor vacuum, and the state has chosen them. This is bitter irony. White Americans who voted for immigration crackdowns in hope of reducing competition for jobs or for protecting American identity are now being recruited by economic compulsion to do the very work they thought immigrants should be removed for doing. Diabolical. Furthermore, also something that you need to understand is that the policy echoes historical forms of exploitative labor systems. First, it invokes parallels to debt peonage and convict leasing, where marginalized populations were forced to work in brutal conditions in exchange of basic substances. One thing is that though this is not slavery in the legal sense, the economic compulsion to labor for access to essential services mirror other exploitative labor regimes. It undermines the very notion of freedom, especially in nations that pride itself on liberty and individual rights. Policies that push people into physical punishing work to survive are more reflective of authoritarian economies than democratic welfare states. So this is what happens, and you need to understand, right? Now, on a structural level, this development exposes the contradiction within the American welfare state. Medicaid expansion under the Affordable Care Act was already a continuous topic, with many Republicans-led states resisting in its ideological grounds. Now, the same political leadership is effective, turning Medicaid into a workforce program, thereby eroding the original intention. Rather than expanding access to care and treating healthcare as public good, the government is reframing it as a commodity, and one must earn through labor. So, this fundamentally alters the nature of public health provision in the U.S., making it as a tool of discipline, of labor discipline, rather than social protection. It's really ironical that it's becoming transactional to basic needs, to the needs of people. These are what people cannot do without. People need medication, right? And we have people that can't even go to the farms and work because of their physical ability. What about the disabled people that are on Medicaid? Are they going to be working on the farms? Right, so that's just a question, and I think these are critical questions that we think through. We need to ask ourselves. Also, economically, the logic of this policy is questionable. Forced or coerced labor rarely results in efficient outcomes. People pushed into agricultural work out of desperation rather than skill or interest are unlikely to be productive or satisfied. This can lead to higher turnover, poor quality work, and even workplace accidents, especially in environments that require specialized skills and physical stamina. Moreover, administrative costs of enforcing such system, tracking hours, vetting work conditions, evaluating eligibility, may exceed the economic gains, rendering the entire model inefficient and burdensome. Also, on a social level, the policy may deepen divisions within American society, and it's true because those who comply with the labor requirement may feel humiliated or resentful, while others who cannot meet the demands may be labeled as lazy or undeserving. This stigmatization furthers the demonization of the poor, which has long been a feature of the American political discourse. It reinforces punitive attitudes towards welfare, suggesting that people must be policed, punished, or exploited in exchange for aid. An approach that undermines empathy and solidarity across class lines, right? Now, politically also, this development may serve as a wake-up call for the rural white voters who have historically aligned with the Republican anti-government ideologies. The party's pro-business, anti-immigrant stance is now directly harming their material interest. While some may double down in defense of these policies, others may begin to question whether their political allegiances truly serve them. These could open up a space for alternative political movement. The center workers, right, universal healthcare, and equitable social safety nets. However, such change would require overcoming decades of racialized narratives that pit poor whites against people of color in the competition for state resources. Additionally, I would like to say that this issue offers a striking lens into how race and class are managed in American society. Historically, agricultural labor has been racialized, first through slavery, then through sharecropping, and more recently, immigrant labor. By compelling white Americans into these roles, the state is inadvertently unraveling a racial division of labor. Yet, instead of addressing with this with a robust ethical labor policy or immigration reform, the government is reshuffling exploitation. It is not solving the labor problem. It's simply redistributing it across racial lines in a manner that fuels resentment without resolution. So, I would like to say this in conclusion. The Secretary of Agricultural Policy, with tied to Medicaid, access to mandatory farm labor, is not merely a logistical response to a labor shortage. It is deeply an ideological maneuver with roots in neoliberalism, racial capitalism, and political betrayal. It forces Americans, particularly white working class voters, to confront the consequences of policies shaped by xenophobia and austerity. While it may temporarily plug labor gaps into the agricultural sector, the long-term effects will likely include poverty, public anger, work exploitation, and further erosion of trust in government institutions. What's needed is coerced labor, but a serious national conversation about immigration reforms, working rights, and the moral basis of healthcare as a human right. I'm your host and presenter, Agent Stories. Thank you for always tuning in and watching me. But until then, I'm hoping to see you in my next video. Until then, peace, love, and harmony. Salute.